celebrating the 40th anniversary of the Janesville Room tonight, so thank you for coming. Just a few housekeeping items before we get started. If you could make sure your cell phone is turned off during the program, we'd appreciate that. If you need the restrooms, they are out that door to the right. Go all the way through the security doors and make a left. There are refreshments at the back of the room and also a lovely book display. The refreshments are courtesy of the Friends of the Library group. And we also want to thank JATV for filming the program tonight, and it will be available on JATV at a later date. I just want to introduce myself too. My name is Melissa Carollo. I'm one of the reference librarians here, and I'm also the new adult programmer. And I'd like you to help me welcome Sue Braden, who is one of our reference librarians.
In April of 1972, Janesville Public Library had been in their new location at 316 South Main Street for 4 years. Library Director Irene Blackford and Adult Services Librarian Carol Little announced the creation of the Janesville Room. An article in the Janesville Gazette explained that local history materials were collected and placed in one location. Demand from students, genealogists, and hobbyists motivated staff to create this space. That is still the case tonight as we celebrate 40 years of the Janesville Room. Library staff are caretakers of this unique collection with a focus on Janesville and Rock County history. With the help of volunteers, we collect and maintain a variety of resources in the Janesville Room. With the support of the City of Janesville, Hedberg Public Library Foundation, Library Board of Trustees, our Friends Group, the Library Director and Management Team, past and present, and you, the community, we strive to provide access to the Janesville Room materials, both in the library and now online. The Janesville Room offers the opportunity for collaboration and sharing of resources. We work with the Rock County Historical Society archives on research projects that often benefit both organizations. We consult city or county government departments on research requests. We work with the other Rock County libraries and historical societies. We've also worked with the Wisconsin Historical Society on collecting General Motors and Parker Pen materials, and the Janesville Gazette has shown strong support of and collaboration with the library. Don and Jerry Hedberg, the major donors for our new building, they advocated to have a separate place for the Janesville Room when this building opened in 1996. Tonight we'll explain the hunt for the story with examples of how to use the Janesville Room resources and trained library staff to find answers and information. Now on your program, I do encourage you to save your program after tonight's presentation. On page 3 and 4, it lists many of our resources that have been digitized. And at the very top of the second page, once you open this up, where it says Local History Online at HBL, that's where you'll look after tonight when you can't remember how to get to what we were teaching you about today. This explains how to get to them, the resources that are online on our website. So I did want to point that out. And then on the back cover, if you turn to the very back cover, we'll have a general list of some of the resources in the Janesville Room, along with some of the resources by local authors. And so we're much appreciative of the folks who've been making a record of the local history and donating copies to the Janesville Room. And so if you look back on page 2, this is the point where we have community comments. And unfortunately, Ben and Judy Adler and Kate Risky were not able to be here in person, but they did send a written comment that they wanted me to share with all of you related to how they're using the Janesville Room. The first is from Den Adler. And Den and Judy, for those of you who don't know, they published some books on local history, and they're very active in photography and other history projects and committees. I enjoy going in the Janesville Room just to browse, seeing what I might find that I didn't know before about Janesville. I've found information and photos about places in town that have changed dramatically. We moved here in 1970, so we didn't see places that were gone before that. I'm also pleased that my Janesville Fife and Drum, a 20-year history about the Corps' adventures from 1975 to 1995, this book is in the Janesville Room, giving several hundred members access to those memories. Signed, Tim Adler. And another note, Sue, I have used the Janesville Room over almost 40 years of research and found it very helpful. Signed, Judy Adler. And another comment from Kay Brisky, which I turned over by mistake. Kay Brisky is a volunteer with the Rock County Historical Society Archives. And she writes, Sue, the Janesville Room has a wealth of information to aid individuals in researching the history of both Janesville and Rock County. Those of us who are volunteer researchers at the Rock County Archives often use both the resources available in the Janesville Room and those we have at the archives when working on research requests from individuals living outside of Rock County. What the archives doesn't have, the Janesville Room usually does. And of course that works in reverse as well. At the archives, we regularly encourage our walk-in researchers to visit the library too, because we know that materials there will also help them with their research. An example of how the Janesville Room helped me with research was when I wrote the History of Janesville Township for our Rock County Genealogy Society newsletter. Laura Gottlieb was a great help in assisting me in finding information in the Janesville Room about a man whose name kept popping up in township history, yet I could find very little information on him. I needed to know who General J.C. Johnston was. With Laura's help, I found that the general had come from New York, where he had worked in the insurance industry for many years. When he arrived in Rock County in 1854, he purchased all of Section 8 and parts of 7 and 9 in Janesville Township, thinking that he would enjoy farming, nearly 3,000 acres. He was, according to records, a successful and prominent farmer. However, 3 years later, by 1857, General Johnston had tired of farming and at age 70 was ready to return to the insurance business. So, along with several Janesville business partners, he formed what is the present-day Northwestern Mutual Life Insurance Company, with Janesville being the company's first hometown before its move to Milwaukee. The title of General seems to have come from his take-charge personality rather than any military service, and is certainly supported by the biographical facts I uncovered about him. The Janesville Room has 2 excellent sources detailing the history of the insurance company and biographical notes on General Johnston. Signed, Kay Brisky. Now, trivia history will be coming up soon. If you want to try your luck, be sure to listen to our stories, and you'll choose the best answer for the questions, the 3 questions on the ballot. So if anybody needs a ballot and a pencil, raise your hand and we'll see that you get one. But just listen to the program and you'll mark your answers as we go along. And then before we leave, we'll draw some winners from a hat and you'll take home the prizes on the table behind you. So. Now, when you enter the Janesville Room, and we'll go there later on, but for the folks viewing on TV or who aren't able to stay for the tour, you'll see a floor map on each table. The floor map gives the general overview and layout of the room. There are some materials in locked cabinets. If you need any of those, just come to the information desk. The staff will help get those for you, whatever you need. Always, always ask for help if you're not sure where to start or need information. There's actually a handout with the map in the room available for you to keep if you'd like. It lists some of the basic materials available as well. Immediately after you enter the room, look to your right, and on the wall, you'll see a photo and story of Henry and Mrs. James, her first name again? Keziah James, for whom Janesville is named, hanging just inside the entrance, newly framed and matted, and paid for by our Friends of the Library group. So you'll want to be sure and take a look sometime. And then our graphic artist redid the print description, and it looks just lovely. And the previous picture had just Henry, and when we found a picture of the missus, we thought she should be included too. So be sure to take a look at that. Now I'm going to just show some slides of some of the books that are in the Janesville Room. You may not think of them as being local history, but they do serve their purpose. Now I'm going to pause at the phone book to share a quick story. We had a woman come in several years ago. She needed to prove that she had resided in Janesville in 1977 or 78. She didn't own property at the time, she was a renter, but she had some money at the unclaimed property office coming to her if she could prove residency. We checked several sources with no luck. We finally went to our old phone books on the shelf, and lo and behold, she was listed. She needed a photocopy of the page with her name on it and a photocopy of the cover. You always need to cite your source, right? And with that, she was able to collect her, I think it was $500 from unclaimed property. So years ago, if library staff hadn't decided we should keep these old phone books, they may be useful someday. They're a part of our local history. She may not have been able to collect that money. So, and here are some of the other resources that are in there. There's Dan Adler's book, you mentioned. We do keep both the police and fire department annual reports, but you'll see the little note in the top right corner. 1997 is the last year the fire department published an annual report that they provided to the library. This next item, this is the final environmental impact statement for the Highway 11 bypass from several years ago. We have that in the Janesville Room. That too proved to be a useful source. We had a patron with some concerns. He came in and was able to use this to get a lot of answers to some questions and use them for follow-up with the Department of Transportation, I believe. And if you wish to read about TIF reports, we have their annual report in addition to the individual TIF reports as well. And if you need to know what a TIF is, stop by the information desk, we'll fill you in. And, oh, I went too far. We'll stop here for a moment. When we're helping with research, we often learn new information about our history. We then add that to our collection for future reference questions. For example, while indexing an obituary from the Janesville Gazette, and we'll show you about that a little later, and it was for Mary Bloster Hewitt, is that her last name? Diana was indexing her obituary, and while reading it, right in the obituary, they had included the fact that when Mary graduated from high school, Janesville High School in 1935, she had written a book story called A History of Janesville from 1835 to 1935 that was published in the 1935 Janesville High School yearbook. And we looked at each other. I think we were on desk together that day. We went and got the 1935 yearbook, and I should have brought one in, but lo and behold, in the back of the yearbook was this wonderful 100-year chronology that Mary had written her senior year in high school. It had photographs, many of which we had never seen before. And so that bit of history was in that Janesville Room the whole time. And until we came across something that told us about it, we didn't know it existed. So we took those pages, we made copies. Our technical services staff cataloged it as a separate item, and we have a copy over here on display. And now you can actually check that out and take it home if you wish to look at it. And it's one of our digitized books that's also online. Another book that's in the Janesville Room is called The Medical History of Janesville, 1833 to 1933. It was in this crummy, beat-up red plastic binder It was on paper that was the mimeograph paper, remember, with the blue letters and used to smell funny? And it had beautiful black and white snapshots of the interior of a variety of medical facilities in Janesville, the hospital, etc. And it was in this sad state of affairs. So one of our staff members who was part-time at the time, an administrative assistant, she retyped the entire text. It took her almost a year. She worked on that. Laura then indexed the book, and we created a table of contents. And then we made several copies, and now it's a book you can actually check out and take home. It's also been digitized and it's online. But that's part of what we do too. We take things that already exist and we spiff it up and make it available so it can be checked out or be digitized. Library staff have also created online resources to help locate information quickly and efficiently. Now, of course, we have RockCat, our online library catalog for books and DVDs. If you do a keyword search on Magnolia Township, it'll pull up resources that have Magnolia Township. Or if you type in Rotary Gardens, there may be things in the catalog about Rotary Gardens or all sorts of things. So the catalog, of course, is your good starting point. But after that, it used to be a little fuzzy. How do I find out what else is here in the library and in the Janesville Room? So before 2002, if staff were asked when a particular story was in the Janesville Gazette, we could check our Janesville Room pamphlet file, and I meant to bring in one of those green file folders of newspaper clippings arranged by topic. We'd hope the article had been clipped. We'd hope the article was still in the file folder where it belonged. Or we'd consult each other. And did anybody remember when did that happen? Was that March or May? We would also try to find it on our microfilm. We have the Janesville Gazette on microfilm back to the beginning in the 1840s. If you knew the month and year, you could pretty much come across it. Or we'd call the Gazette for help. But starting in 2002, our local history database was born. Laura Gottlieb created this online tool, and she'll explain her hunt for the story that motivated her to propose this new tool. Laura?
Can you hear me? Yeah. I'm getting over the flu. My voice is a little foggy. I started working part-time at the reference desk here at Hedberg in 1997. And all the time that I worked here, I also had another part-time job. I was a freelance book indexer at home. And what I did was make up the indexes. I'd write the indexes for nonfiction books for publishers and authors. So when I came here, I was really impressed by the kinds of, the ways we could find material for people. If you wanted to know some consumer information, what kind of furnace to buy, we had these online databases that could really help us find things very quickly. If you needed a car repair, we had online databases for that. If you wanted to know what book you should read next in a series, we had materials to help you find that. But where we really fell down was with our own history of our own community. We knew we had tons of material on Janesville, in the Janesville Room and in the regular stacks, but finding it was like literally trying to find a needle in a haystack. So after some years of working here, I realized that I could bring my indexing skills from home to work, and I could create this local history database, which is basically just an index to the newspaper clippings we had, the pamphlets, the many books we have on Janesville, many of which did not even have an index to them themselves, and what other kinds of, and all the photographs we had as well, the historical photographs. So an example of how this really played out was that our former library director, Karen Krieger, was on a committee to make this riverfront park here between the library and the Rock River. And she was looking for a picture of a three-tiered fountain that had once been a courthouse park. We knew that we probably had such a photograph, but You know, it took us days and days and days looking for it. And we really wanted to please her, you know, we wanted to get it to her as fast as we could. It was very frustrating to spend so much time looking and looking somewhat fruitlessly for this photograph. But then we finally, after all these days, did find one, which is this wonderful one of George King with his canoe for some reason in Courthouse Park in front of this three-tiered fountain. I guess this is a model that was going to be considered for a model for a fountain in this park, but it hasn't yet been done. But in any case, now we can find any photograph of a three-tiered fountain in seconds with our database. So that's the kind of thing we can really do now. It's not enough just to have the material, but being able to really put your fingers on it when people really want it and do it fast and efficiently. It makes us look smart, which is what reference librarians really like to be, or at least to seem to be. It's a great service to our patrons who don't have to wait very long. So that is, we've also, in addition to having the local history database, we also have started additional databases with listing the people in the Janesville high school yearbooks, and also in the obituaries in the Janesville Gazette. None of these is totally complete. They may never be complete, but we have volunteers and staff working on them, and a lot of progress gets made on them every year, a surprising amount of progress. And, you know, it enables us to help our patrons in a great way. So now that I'm retired, I always hoped this would be my legacy, that the state of these databases would be, and I really feel like that has come to pass. So I'm very proud of my contributions and all the people who helped contribute to them.
All right.
Okay. Can you hear me? So one thing we wanted to show you is how do I get to the, am I too much? Maybe I'll just use the mic. I think I'm just going to use. Okay. How do I get to the local history database? How do I get to the obituary index if I want to search it? How do I get to the yearbook index if I want to search? HedbergPublicLibrary.org is our website, and that's where the information is. Here's our home page, and you'll see on the home page we have a red circle around research tools. So when you get to the home page, click on research tools. Then slide down to the bottom of that page, and you'll see down at the bottom it says local history. So click on local history, and then right at the top of our local history page, you'll see all three listed there. The first one, local history database. The second, our obituary index. It starts around 1993, but if we do research for anybody, we're adding anybody we can. There might be some 1800s, you name it. As we do research, we keep adding. And then our Janesville yearbooks, we are indexing every name in those yearbooks. And so if you need to look up somebody, you can go right in and look at them. When you click on local history database, the very first one, you can slide down to search the database, and you will get the search engine. And we just wanted to show you that one search engine, and it's right here. And you'll see at the top it asks for a headline, and then the second one is the subject headings, and then if there's an article date or source, you can also plug that in. And one of our major searches has been for Representative Ryan, and I think Sue's going to talk a little more about that later. So our local history database, created in 2002, it was the great equalizer for staff here at the library. It's a place where we can all go and find information for our patrons. Again, date and headline of article by subject. The full text of the article is not in there, but the headline is. If there's any photographs, people are identified. There's graphs, there's maps, all kinds of information, even though that heading may be rather short. And one of the great powers of the local history database we're finding is you can do subject searching. Right now, we have over 600 articles on Paul Ryan in the database, and it starts at 1998 when he first decided to run for the U.S. House of Representatives. And you can go all the way through just by looking at the headlines. You can see the history of his elections and his naming as a vice presidential candidate. It's fascinating. So subject searching is helping us immensely. Keyword searchable 24/7 and offers answers to many questions. Now, I want to take you through search for the story. And the photograph you see right here is of Lefty and Joan Clark. What do reference librarians do when a question comes to us that seems impossible? We try anyway. Joan Clark, a former Janesville resident visiting from Arizona, asked whether we could help her find a photo of herself and her husband Lefty that had been printed in the Janesville Gazette sometime in the 1990s. The only thing she remembered about the image was that the two of them had been photographed in their winter hats outside a tavern called, perhaps, the Blue Moon. The photo meant a lot to her and her husband because the original, once in her daughter's possession, had burned in a house fire. So what are our methods when we're trying to track down something as difficult to find as this? The Hedberg Public Library has many sources for finding local information. HPL has the Janesville Gazette back to when the paper was started in 1845. So we knew we could verify the date and location of if we could verify the date and location of the photograph, we could get a copy of that photo. First, we checked the local history database, we checked indexes, newspaper articles, nothing. Next, we checked city directories and old phone books to see if we could find something called the Blue Moon Tavern. Nothing. So, questions that one staff member has written down, they are left at the reference desk for the rest of the staff to come in. One librarian remembered there was a tavern called the Silver Moon out on Highway 11, on Highway 14, I should say, by the Rock and Walworth County line. So the librarian this librarian phoned the Clarks and they verified, yes, that's what it was, the Silver Moon. And so sometimes we need the memories of our other staff members. We talk to each other. So a mere year date search is not going to yield very much in the way of results. All we had was the 1990s. So we searched the internet for Silver Moon Delavan because we thought it's headed over that way. And that search yielded the name of the owner, Glenn Davis. And it had his email address. So we emailed him and he said, oh, I remember that. It was a Packers Super Bowl game and we watched it outside and everybody got all dressed up. So he didn't know which Super Bowl it was, but we knew January 26, 1997, January 25th, 1998. We've zeroed in on a couple of dates. So what we do then is we take the film. So January 97 might have been split in two, the 1st through the 15th and the 16th through the 30th or 31st. We put the film in, sure enough, Monday, January 27, 1997, there on the front page were Joan and Lefty Clark in their winter hats, sitting in the cold section of the bleachers, set up at Rambo Field outside the Silver Moon Tavern. So we wanted to give you that story so you could see how important it is for us to pool our knowledge, but also how our local history database has helped us. We actually put in at least 2 entries into the local history database relating to this and relating to the Silver Moon. Now, the next one I want to tell you about is about a ghost. We had a patron come to our desk who said she is living in this house, the very top one. It is Judge John R. Bennett's house. It's at the corner of Milton Avenue and Memorial on the, let's see what side, it's the west. I think it's the northwest corner of Milton and Memorial. And she knew it was the Bennett house, and she knew, and she had the current address. So what we did, this one we went right to the local history database. And what we had in the local history database was the first entry you see under historic buildings, a pre-1893 photo of the residence of John R. Bennett, County Judge. That's all that was in there. So it says over to the right, it says artwork of Rock County. That's the source. And this is the source. And so we looked it up and we found it. So that previous picture is exactly what you see on this page, and the patron went, oh, that's it, that's my house. So we found some more information for her. We found out that currently it's located at 809 Milton Avenue. The next entry you see up on the screen is actually the obituary from the 1899 paper of Judge Bennett. We found that on Access Newspaper Archive. It's a database that we have. And in the obituary, it said he died at home at 201 Milton Avenue. So there has been actually a house number change since he died in 1899. So the patron had a photograph from the era, pre-1893. We were able to give her an obituary, and she was just thrilled. So that kind of gives you the steps of what we do and how we pool our brain power when we are searching the elusive question. Sue.
Thank you, Diana. By the way, now that Laura's been retired, I should mention that when that project started with the local history database, it was Laura and Diana who went through all the file folders in the Janesville Room. If you take the tour, you'll see there's a lot of drawers, a lot of folders. After they did all the news clippings, they decided, well, let's do the pamphlets. So they went back through and did each pamphlet in each file folder and got those indexed into the database. And then when that was finished, Laura said, well, we have these wonderful books. Let's get some of those indexed as well. And now that Laura's retired, Diana's been doing the indexing, and a great job. So kudos to both of you for that. It's been a wonderful resource. Applause. Yes. And while I think of it, I should mention Richard Thayer, who is here with us this evening. Richard is now retired and the former head of the reference department here at Hedberg Library. So kudos to Richard as well for caretaking the Janesville Room and all the resources through the years. Well, the next story you're going to hear about is one related to the old sail barn fire at Rotary Garden site. And Diana, you're going to help me out on this one a little bit. But we had a patron, a woman would come in, and I think it was at least a couple years ago, she started to ask, well, I know there was an old barn that burned down by Rotary Gardens, but I can't find out when this happened. And we checked the local history database, we went through the usual routine, no luck. She said, well, I've asked at Rotary Gardens, and they don't know when it happened either. I said, well, I'm sure it was in the paper. We agreed on that, but we didn't know when it would have been in the paper. And she gave us kind of a year range because related to how old she was at the time. So I believe we thought it was either the mid to late 30s to the early or mid 40s about a 10-year window we were looking at. And it's one of those things we'd work on a bit and then we'd set it aside or we'd get stuck. And she always said, oh, don't worry, no hurry, I'll just keep asking every time I come in. And I don't think she even left her name and number. Well, she did.
Yeah, maybe not
Yeah,
later.
you know, and finally we said, well, let's get your name and number so we can make sure we can contact you as we hopefully get closer. Well, so she was very patient and we appreciate that. Now, our local history database had related information about the Janesville Livestock Exchange Sales Pavilion in another location, Lloyd Avenue, but no mention of a fire at what is now Rotary Gardens or by Lions Beach or Atlas Pit. That's over in that area too. I'm reading here when I should be reading here. The library's Access Newspaper Archive Database. And be sure to stop by, the information desk will explain to you how to get to that. It has some articles from the Gazette and other newspapers nationwide, but it's not complete. So it's hit and miss, but sometimes it'll come through. It did provide a couple of clues. We broadened our search. Instead of just searching Janesville newspapers, if you just search United States, Wisconsin, take out Janesville if that's not working. So you search all Wisconsin papers, it'll pull up little blurbs about Janesville in other papers around the state. And that's what helped us with one of our first clues. In an article from the Sheboygan Press dated June 1st, 1932, it explains that plans are underway to establish the Wisconsin Dairy Cattle Market in Janesville. So we knew that was a clue that they were talking about building a new facility. And you know, I'm missing a piece of my slide with the rest of the question. One moment, I'm going to hop out live on the internet and pull this up. I'm sorry. There we go, just a minute. Okay. Yes. Local history, and then it's right in our, we have a local history blog, where we put stories. And I'm just typing in Old Sale Barn to get to that entry. And here it is. Okay. So I don't mean to read all of this, but just an article then from the Gazette dated February 17th, 1968 said the cattle sales barn leased by Norwood had announced the sale barn went out of business and the structure at 901 Lloyd Avenue would be converted to a warehouse for Norwood Mills. The 1968 article then said, in May 1940, the property at 1901 Lloyd Avenue was taken over by Wisconsin Dairy Cattle Market, Inc., owned by Dr. Buzowitz, Walter Gasper, and Robert Morton. So we wondered, could May 1940 be the correct time frame for the fire at Rotary Gardens? We contacted the Rock County Historical Society archives for help at this point. They have the Sanborn fire insurance maps for the years 1926 to 1944. Sanborn fire insurance maps are a wonderful resource. They have the actual books. Here at the library, we just have microfilm, so the books are a lot easier to use. But it lets you track a particular structure at a certain location and see how it changes over the years. If they put an addition on, if they added a garage in the backyard, if it's no longer there. So it's a wonderful source. Their Sanborn maps for the years 1926 to 1944 had a message printed on the map with a mark, not an X, but a mark, a square, on the spot of the current Rotary Garden site that said, May 1944, Wisconsin Dairy Cattle Market Sales Barn. So as of May of 1944, there was a sales barn at what became Rotary Gardens. Now, just to back up, when we thought it was May 1940, we were getting ready to start searching the microfilm for May of 1940. Then we said, well, let's double check with the archives at the Historical Society, and boy, we're glad we did. When they gave us that May 1944, we said, well, that would be more logical, let's start there. So we sat down with the microfilm. We also looked at city directories and confirmed some of the addresses, but basically we started going through the May 1944 microfilm, and we found an article. And I'm going to get back. And 1 moment, please. And here's the article we found. It was on the front page of the Janesville Gazette for Monday, May 14th, 1944. And the headline says, "Old stock sales barn destroyed. Building near Lions Beach, almost total loss in Sunday fire." So we were very pleased. We had our patron's name and phone number. We gave her a call, and actually we had planned to mail the article to her. She happened to stop by the desk the very next day. Serendipity happens a lot at the information desk. We're so glad she asked the question. She was right about the date. That was within the time frame. We'll also be sharing this with the Rock County Historical Society and Rotary Gardens, because we have talked with both the agencies, and we were very pleased we found that. So that's what happened. That's when the old sale barn burned. Now, the next story I want to share, and Diana's mentioned a bit already, in our local history database. We've had a lot of media requests about information about Paul Ryan, and the local history database has been invaluable. And basically, once you get to this page, in the middle box, because we actually know it is an official subject heading, you just enter Paul Ryan, and then in the lower part of the page where it says Find Records right here, you just click that button after you enter your keyword search. And you'll get the list of results, and you can see in red 641 entries in the local history database related to Paul Ryan. On the left side is the name of the folder. In the center is the headline, and on the right is the date. When you see a date by itself, that means it was in the Janesville Gazette. Notice it's in reverse chronological order. The first date is February 1998. Let me just check that. Nope. The other thing to be aware of, some of the folders, as you can imagine, 600 articles is quite a large folder. So we've taken the folders out of the file drawer and actually put it in a 3-ring binder. And we actually cataloged the binder, and this is now in our Janesville Room, rather than in a file drawer.
This is volume 1 for Paul Ryan.
Yes, volume 1 of 2 volumes. We actually, and we have them in chronological order. At the front of volume 1, we kept copies of family obituaries. We've been asked for his dad's obituary, his grandpa's obituary. And then we've also found his great-grandpa and great-great-grandfather's obituaries, and we have copies of those here. This can't be checked out, but you can use it here. You can peruse the online database to see what's there. You can also do a keyword search. Maybe you just want the articles about his elections. So you've got his name in the middle box. In that top box, just put in the word elections.
I thought it was
No, it's a binder. So, and our volunteers help us do this. We take those clippings out, we put them in a binder, and then Tech Services gets a catalog and enters all the, they put in all the notes in that catalog record to help you find it when you go on the library catalog. So if you type in Paul Ryan in Rockcat, you'll pull up this binder, and it'll tell you it's in the Janesville Room. We also have the yearbooks. Those have been very popular, but we're just especially pleased with how helpful this has been over these last several months. Diana, am I missing something about Paul Ryan?
Yes, tell them who's come.
Oh, well, we've had quite a few different media visit the library, And one day in August, a man came up to the desk and said he was looking not only for information on Paul Ryan, but also on the community. Well, it was Don Ganya from NPR, if you're familiar with him, and he was quite pleased with the service and resources we were able to provide. He came back later that evening and he said, you know, I was thinking I'd like to maybe do a side story about how a library responds when a local son becomes a national figure. He said, and the day we were explaining things to him, he leaned over the desk and he said, I've never seen anything like this. And then later that evening, we came back and our boss, Mary, happened to be on the desk with me. And he said, I've been thinking I'd like to do a story on your library. He said, it might not get on the radio at all. It might be on This Week or Next. It'll just be a couple minutes, but I'd like to do that. And so we worked with him, and he did indeed have a little blurb about the Hedberg Public Library on NPR. And we had phone calls and emails after that. It was a lot of fun. Perfect Strangers called and said, way to go. It was fun to hear a library get a plug in on NPR. So we were pleased about that. I think that's all I had on that. Another source of information on our website, and we won't go into this a lot, but we definitely want to mention it. It's a section called Janesville's Past. It's a digitized collection. Many of our books and photographs are now all online. You can get to them through the internet. It's been a tremendous resource for us. What happened is, over the years, I think in 2005 was the first year, Deb Case, retired reference librarian, asked to apply for a grant from the Library Services and Technology Act, LSTA, to digitize our Bud Groover photograph collection. And library management said, that sounds great, go for it. And Deb was the lead person with help from other staff in writing the grant. The grant was awarded, and we prepared our materials. We sent them to Madison. We did the scanning. They're all on their servers up in Madison, UW-Madison's Digital Collection Center. So our computer systems person was pleased about that. So they're not using up our room. But now when people inquire, we can tell them on the phone or in an email, go here, go here, go here. Type in these words, you pull up the pictures, and we can email it to them or they can print them out. And so that's been a fabulous source. It's available 24/7. And that was called Janesville's Past. A few years later, in 2008, we wrote a second grant. I believe Deb and Laura worked on that one. And that was Janesville's Past Part 2. And we did our city directories, which are now available online up to 1931. And then a few years ago, in 2011, we did Janesville's Past Part 3, Histories. And we took 10 books about Janesville's history and had applied to have those digitized. We received the grant, and so all the materials you see over here, including the walking guides for the different areas of town, are now digitized and online. And when you need help or have questions how to get to them, just stop by the desk and we'll show you. I think I just have one more slide. This is what the Janesville's Past page looks like. All the materials listed there are actually available online, and they're keyword searchable. And you can actually search all of them at once. And a quick story about that, we had a gentleman come in. He had been working at Kentucky Fried Chicken 20 years ago when it was robbed here in town. But he was trying to prove to a friend that this did indeed happen, and he was there, but he didn't remember the date to find it in the paper. Well, the wonderful book, Century of Stories, where it chronicles our history decade by decade, we turned to the 70s. He looked there, sure enough, was an entry that Mike Dupre included about KFC and another McDonald's, I think, both robbed in this 2-day period in June of 1970-something. So he found it. Then Laura then indexed that into the local history database. But now that the book is actually digitized, I can do a search. I can type in fried chicken and it'll pull up the page in Century of Stories that talks about the robbery at that store. So the patron was very pleased. He had his proof, he went to the microfilm and got the entire article. So Janesville's Past is another digitized, is one of our digitized resources. So now materials are in the library and now they're also online. So that opens up a whole nother level of access for people all around the country. And at this time, we are at the end of our slide presentation, except for one more that lists if you have questions or would like help, you can give us a call or send us an email. Thank you.